Timmons, and this is Brooklyn Savvy. With issues related to money driving many couples to divorce, money seems to be a threat to a successful partnership. So how do we create financial intimacy? Jacquette Timmons, author of Financial Intimacy, will talk to us about how to avoid the emotional and financial pitfalls women encounter when love and money intersect. But before I introduce Jacquette and get into this very provocative title, I'm going to introduce our Savvy panel. Our newest member, Tracy Smith. Come on, people. Give her a hand. Denise Arbisu. We have Jacquette Timmons. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lisa Bing and Devorah Halberstam. So, Jacquette, financial intimacy, finance and intimacy. Gee, intimacy. I don't see how those things go together.
What don't you see about how they go together?
Well, finance, I mean, hard, money, you know. Yeah, exactly. Whereas, you know, intimacy is sweet and soft.
But see, actually, if you think about it, in order to get to that sweet, soft spot in the intimacy, sometimes you have to go through some challenging times.
That's true.
And so when you think about the way in which money and love intersect, the way that they come together is by having those conversations around those things that are tough and challenging.
But have you had that conversation?
I actually think that you don't make it there.
What do you mean you don't make it there?
That means that if you get past the money thing, then you finally have the intimacy. But to get up to that point is actually a very long road.
It is a road. I don't know how long it is.
It's
for some
crisis
people
management.
Everything is everything is crisis management. Everything is crisis management.
In the old days, wasn't marriage and finances together?
And totally,
Right?
7 years this time.
But you know what, Devorah,
and 25 the first time.
This is good, but I think what's happening here is money is never just about money. Meaning, from what I'm hearing
That's
from
true.
you.
I think you're
so
right.
let's talk a little bit about that. Like, what is underneath the fact that you're struggling with financial issues with your spouse? Others may not be, but typically we struggle with that.
Well, let me just back up for a second.
We just had a moment there.
I purposely do not provide a singular definition for financial intimacy because I think it will look and feel different for each person and for each couple. But having said that, there are some common themes. And one of the common themes is that it's all about negotiating and navigating the emotions that will surface and the information that you will discover. Information that you will discover about yourself, information that you will discover about that other person.
How do you get good at that, though? See, I think that's what she's talking about. How do you get good at that?
But you only get good at it by going through the challenges and having the conversations. And so the second element to financial intimacy is having those deeper conversations, which then leads to the deeper connections. And what that really means is, how do you get to the context? I mean, we all show up in relationships with our baggage. So how do you get to the what, why, where, and how? And it's really through all of that that you create then the financial intimacy.
Well, Jacquette, let me ask you a question. Do you think how soon do you approach such a heavy topic? You know, I mean, sometimes in a new relationship or even in any relationship, because many times I see people, let's say it's your first date, some people split the bill. I mean, is that a date?
Well, that tells you something.
I mean, what does that tell you? Somebody,
Well, see, that would not work for me. Different strokes for different folks, right? But one of the things that I always say is yes, the book is focused on creating financial intimacy with another person, but at the same time, you have to first create it with yourself. And so in terms of when is it an appropriate time, I always lead with ask a question that you would feel comfortable answering if you were being asked the same thing.
That's a very good point, because growing up, we're all taught that we don't discuss finances.
Exactly.
And
That's right.
it's so taboo socially to even bring money up.
Right.
So, you know, you do have to become comfortable with it yourself, I would presume.
It sounds like we need to first start with us. And understand, so what are some questions we need to ask ourselves first before we can engage in this courageous conversation?
I think you have to take a look at why do you do the things that you do. So look at why do I make the choices that I make. And so that means examining your family background, examining the cultural cues that you take in, examining how do you respond to what your peers are doing relative to what you are doing. That's how you get an idea of well, why am I the way that I am? Why
So
do
in
I
other
make the
words,
choices?
you need therapy before you.
Therapy is a good thing. Self-awareness is an awesome thing.
But I wanted to ask you specifically about the dating process.
Okay.
I'll tell you what. Okay,
No, I'm teasing. Go
I'm
ahead.
talking to you.
Yeah, I see
Okay,
you.
but if you have to, it's like you're getting to a place where you need to talk about money because it's safer to do it before than getting into battles later.
Absolutely.
So let's
This is
say
assuming you're on the road to marriage.
let's say
Exactly.
it's the woman who is financially more independent than the man. Already you're getting to like a roadblock. It's like, oh, it's all nice and everybody, well, that's really nice, but you will never know how that will ultimately work out until you're in the relationship.
So you're kind of saying that you're being more, you're looking at money, like most of us, through the lens of power. And this, and
right.
if you
I
are
think the
the
men look at
breadwinner,
it
yes, they
that
do.
way.
Yes.
Comment, would
Right.
you comment on that, Jacquette?
When you think about it, it evokes so many different emotions. So it's a matter of power, it's a matter of trust, it's a matter of control, it's a matter of security.
Those words.
The power
It's
of
a matter
words.
of
Right.
So, Jacquette, when we talk about traditional male-female relationships, when we're talking about power, don't many women expect the man to take care of them?
Absolutely.
And so if
Or
you
has that
cannot,
changed?
Well,
has
or
that
has
changed?
it?
See, I don't think it
Has
has.
that I don't think that it
You
has.
believe
I
that
don't think
still
so either.
going on today?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that the problem is, and when this is one of the things that I talk about in the book in terms of the feminist movement and
Right.
the second wave
Right.
versus the third
Right.
wave.
Right.
And this is probably an unfair characteristic, but I narrowly describe the second wave as the right to work and the third wave as the right to stay home.
Yeah, the
Right.
Right.
opt-out
Exactly.
solution.
Opt out, right.
Yeah.
Wow.
But the problem is that so many of our contemporaries are not honest with ourselves about what we want.
That's
Right.
very true.
Right.
That's very
That-
true.
I
So,
agree with
you know,
that.
Right, that's very
Yeah.
true.
That
Because
is
you know
true.
what? There's that place where you know, and I hate to use this word, but you're going to have to compromise on a few things.
sure.
But that's
Right.
life.
If you're going to settle down with a spouse or with any significant other, they're not going to be a complete package. So it has to be around those areas that you're willing to negotiate on. But sometimes areas that you think you're willing to negotiate on, you get into the relationship
And you
then-
realize that you're not.
And they're not.
So a lot of it, right, exactly.
But don't you find out a lot of it as it goes along?
If you're
so
if you are observant, yes, you do.
It's
If you
certainly
are
a discussion.
observant.
And remember also, excuse me, Jacquette, in every situation, it's very individual, as you said before.
Right.
When you're talking about children, I know for myself, there's that protective stuff. Part of my working thing is for my kids and for my children. So there's not just about me and him.
Right.
There's a much
but isn't-
larger picture there.
But isn't what you're saying, though, is to be conscious and intentional about these questions and not just letting it evolve
And not just
But I
hoping
think
that it
reactive.
would work out.
And not being reactive.
But I
Right.
think what I hear Devorah saying is we can say all this great stuff, not being being intentional and all, but then you're going to add that whole layer of emotion onto this. How do we discharge or de-stress or whatever that word is, conversations around money and relationships?
Right.
Meaning,
I think part
do you
of it-
have
I
some
think-
success in
Well,
that?
I think a part of it is that we have to make a differentiation between having a conversation around money and fighting about it. Because a lot of times we mistake fighing about it as talking about it.
Sometimes that's
And
a
the
good
second
thing.
thing, and the second thing is to not just think of transactional conversations around money as having a conversation.
But sometimes the transactional conversation can lead to the ultimate conversation.
Well, yeah, but both can be avenues to lead to the conversation, but we should not assume that if we are fighting, that's talking, and if we're having a transactional, like, we need to buy a refrigerator, we need to fund
But
college.
those can be a little easier, right?
Yeah, but hold on. Are we arguing for what doesn't work, or are we open to some
No.
new
I
ways
think
that?
what we're doing right now is just kind of putting some reality into this.
Well,
and it's not that what you're saying is not real, because it is. But where Devorah is where I think a lot of couples start, and
It's
we
not
want her to be
objective.
able, and
It's
we want this
pretty much.
conversation to get to
Right.
how to
New
fix
options.
that. Right.
But
New
that,
options.
what that then requires, though, is a commitment, especially if you are already in a relationship.
You might want to write that word down. Well, you know you're right. Because what we're seeing is a case study right here and now.
Jacquette, I'll tell you what. I think
Thank
the
you for being
best
so
way.
honest.
I think the best way is that
Not
they
to
should
get
only.
married.
I would like to have a
get
third
married, Lisa
person
says.
when it comes to money.
arbitrator.
Sitting there as an arbitrator.
I hear you.
A mediator.
That's
There you
right.
go.
We're
Okay,
financial
can I hire you? Can I hire
You
you?
know, but there's something else here too that we can speak about, which is the whole idea around a financial divorce, where people just decide to keep their money separate.
Yes,
Right.
that is very. I do know of a situation. This is from a friend of mine who is a psychologist and has a therapy practice. And she actually was working with a couple who was on the verge of divorcing. And what they realized is that they really loved one another. But she was really tired of every single time he had a business venture and it didn't work out, that financially compromising the family. So what they decided to do, and I don't know all of the particulars, I was just in awe about, wow, I never heard of such a thing.
Right.
They got a financial divorce so that anything that he does financially will not have any sort of repercussions, thank you, on her and their children.
Interesting. Well, you know, we're going to have to break. We're going to see a quick little segment of Keeping It Brooklyn. Okay.